Good evening, everyone. I cannot stand that sound. Oh my God, help me. I can't stand that sound. I love your TikTok, but the noises gotta go, honey. They got to go. This is Heartbreak Hotel. Welcome to Heartbreak Hotel. To the place that broke my heart and left me yearning. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think there's a way to mute it. I've tried it in my settings personally. There's no way. I think it's because they want you to hear fireworks and bells and whooshes and swooshes and you love that song too? This Place Hotel, aka Heartbreak Hotel by the Jackson 5. It's my favorite Jackson 5 song. Favorite. Okay? This is Heartbreak Hotel. Oh, I'm matching the background. Really, Buttermilk? Oh my gosh. See? We finally have something in common. Love you, Buttermilk. I think the candidate is here. Yes, I see. I see. We're going to finally crack the case. Mr. Randy Jackson, if that is your real name.
That is my real name. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Okay. Who is Jackson Simpkins? Is that your superhero cover?
Jackson is the middle name, actually. I'm a middle name guy. So, yeah. So, when my parents named me back in the olden times, there was no, American Idol host named Randy Jackson. So, who knew that, I was going to be asked
Jackson
my whole
5. There was the Jackson 5.
There was a Jackson. There was a Randy Jackson in the Jackson 5. Yes, there was.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah,
what is
but
this?
yeah,
So Simpkins, who is Simpkins? Is that your persona?
that's my actual last name. So yes. So Jackson is the middle name that we go by. Randy's the first name that we, that's the legal government name.
Okay. I was about to say, what name you put on the paperwork?
So on the ballot it will say Randy Jackson Simpkins. So they're all going to be there. They're all the names are going to be there on the ballot.
And let me guess, you prefer to be called Jack?
Jackson or Jax.
Jackson.
Yep.
See?
Yes.
Listen, I can't do it. It's too much for me to remember. Do you know how old I am? Do you know what season of life I am in?
Listen, being a middle name guy, and now in medicine, because on official medical documents, when I put in orders, it has my first name. So, when I get a phone call from somebody, they're like, "Oh, can I speak with Randy?" And the people at work are like, "Who? What? I don't know." And I'm like, "It's me." So you're not the only one.
Dr. Randy.
I'm a PA, so yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So Dr. Randy, sometimes Jackson, Simpkins, Jackson. Okay. Anyway, hello everyone. Hello. Dr. Randy, have you shared this with your followers? Does anyone know you're here besides me?
I have put it out to the TikTok followers that are here. Put it out a little bit on the other socials. TikTok is by far our most popular social media site with way more engagement. So whenever we do anything, it always usually gets TikTok first, and then Instagram and Threads will follow.
Oh, that's good to know. You're one of the very few candidates we've had on here who actually knows how to use TikTok. Everyone else is like, "Ooh, I'm old." Ooh. And they'll be 22. It's crazy. I don't know.
Okay. Full disclosure. A few minutes ago, I was like, "Wait, somebody Google how do I join a TikTok live?"
No, 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 please.
So I before the campaign, I was actually not a TikToker. So I had
Oh,
avoided it. I was an Instagram scroller, an Instagram Reels kind of
yeah.
guy. So I got all the TikTok stuff just 2 weeks late.
Okay, that's fine. But you're here, and we are glad you are here. We're going to talk
I'm here
politics.
now.
Listen, I have been
Yes, we
accused.
are.
I have been accused of making the questions too hard. So if something is too hard for you, let me know so I can laugh at you because I ain't gonna do nothing about
I listen. You know what? If you do it, then I deserve it. So that'll be
it.
fine. That'll be just fine.
Okay, everyone, welcome to Our Vote Counts OVC Town Hall TikTok Live tonight. We are speaking with Dr. Randy Jackson Simpkins Jack Jackson for Kentucky House of Representatives, 62 District 62. Listen, District 62 is hot, okay? It's hot. One of the fastest growing in Kentucky. We got some things we're going to
Yes.
talk about. I'm going to ask him about.
Hmm.
We're going to get down to business right now. My name is Ayana, by the way. That is my legal name. And I am only called Ayana. I don't have any nicknames.
That's
Our
easy
vote
to. That's
counts.
good. That's good.
You know
That'd be
what?
one less thing for me to remember. That's good.
Yes, they tried to give me a nickname as a baby, and I refused. I refused. I said no.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Our Vote Counts is a nonpartisan coalition of citizens from diverse states and backgrounds. I am in Ohio, by the way. Hello, neighbor. United by a shared commitment to empowering voters and promoting candidates who stand for integrity, inclusion, and accountability in the upcoming elections. Our Vote Counts is more than a name. It is a promise, a movement, a rallying cry for democracy. Together, we are shaping the future, one informed vote at a time. You better believe it. Jackson Simpkins is a healthcare professional. You just heard him say he's a PA. That means physician's assistant. Do they call you doctor? Am I allowed to call you doctor, or is that like
So
taboo?
I'm not a doctor, but I mean,
Okay.
I'm a man in healthcare. So men in healthcare are doctors and women in healthcare are nurses, and we're like, no, no,
No,
yeah, it's very, very frustrating. Yeah, but so I am not a doctor. I am just a PA. I'm proud to be a PA, but I am a
just a
PA.
PA. What you mean, just a PA?
So yeah, there was a little bit of a misspeak there because that school was
Good.
not easy. That's for sure.
Yes. And you're a veteran. What were you doing? What were you doing? Oh, you were in the Navy. It says here you were in the Navy and you
Mhm.
served as a hospital corpsman or corpsman.
Hospital corpsman. Yes, I was. Which in the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, they call them medics or med techs. In the Navy, we're called hospital corpsmen.
Like MASH?
And which is one of the reasons that I wanted to join the Navy. I watched way too many MASH reruns as a kid. That
Oh
is the
my
honest hand
gosh.
to God truth.
Yes,
Hawkeye
me
Pierce is part of the
too.
reason that I did what I did. But so what people don't understand is that the Marine Corps does not have dedicated medical staff.
Mhm.
So the Marine Corps actually uses Navy corpsmen for their medical providers. So I was one of those Navy corpsmen who did all of my Navy training, and then I went out to Camp Pendleton, and we do another 3-4 months of Marine Corps training. So you get the skin fade, you walk and talk and act like a Marine. And so I was actually with a Marine Corps tank company. So I wasn't, the boats and water stuff is totally foreign to me. I was I was a tanker doc. So I was with a Marine Corps tank company. So, yes, I am a Navy corpsman, but I did my time with the Marine Corps. So
Oh,
I kind of identify
wow.
with both of those worlds.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Okay. You're in emergency medicine. It says here you're in emergency
Yes.
medicine, which is amazing. A thrilling type of environment. So your background in military service and emergency medicine shapes your commitment to public service and community well-being. You're trying to unseat someone named Tony Hampton.
I am trying to unseat Mr. Tony Hampton.
Your district is located in central Kentucky and includes parts of Fayette County and Scott County, covering suburban and rural communities in the greater Lexington, Kentucky region. You have roughly 43,000 people living in your district with a nice young median age of 38 to 39. Let's see what else we got here. Median household income is approximately $84,000, a nice middle class living there. While about 10% of the residents live below the poverty line. But somebody's coming into town to do something about that, right? Some big corporation trying to change the circumstances. We'll talk about it. Just calm, be cool. Just be cool. Let's see what else. Well, you know what? You tell me more about yourself and why you decided to run for this office. Why you decided, rather, to run for this office.
So I have always been kind of a political junkie. I never wanted to be a candidate. I've volunteered for candidates in the past. I've done my texts and my phone calls, and I've done canvassing in the past. I was president of the College Democrats at NKU, right up next door to Ohio there, which was my alma mater. And I never wanted to be a candidate, but, obviously how everything has gone the past couple of years, both with national politics and with state politics, I hit the point where I couldn't just wait till election time and make phone calls and send texts anymore, So started going to a group called Progress Kentucky. They had some volunteer events where they're working so they're picking no, candidates before the primary. They're committed to supporting whatever, more liberal, left-leaning candidate, and not even necessarily Democrat. It will fall that way, but, they're not an actual partisan group. They're looking to whoever's going to kind of push Kentucky forward from a progressive way. And it's volunteering, no specific candidates before the primary and no specific parties. We're just trying to talk to voters and see what's important. And after being there, I found out that there wasn't anybody running against Tony Hampton in my district. And one of the speakers at the first event was another fellow veteran named Adam Moore. He's a representative here in Kentucky from a neighboring district over in Lexington. And he told the story about how his first campaign, there was nobody running against the Republican in his district. And he said to himself, I'm better than nobody, I'm better than no opponent, on the ballot. And so he jumped in that race and he won that race. So I kind of just talked about it a little bit and I kept waiting for somebody to tell me no. I was like, okay, somebody tell me this is crazy. Somebody tell me I'm nuts. This is something.
This is crazy. You're nuts.
This is crazy. Yeah. See, okay. Where were you a few months ago?
In Ohio.
But I mean, everybody. We're sitting there. We're sitting at that event, and and my husband's sitting next to me, and he's kind of like nudging me, like, "No, you have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this." Everybody said the same thing. So I kind of talked to some people. We decided to jump in the race. Then very early on, there was actually another Democrat running. So there was going to be a primary opponent, but then he had to step back and drop out because of a conflict with the government job position. He's a good guy, no kind of scandal. It was just a current position wouldn't jive with the
you got to quit your job. So you work for the Fed or the
and the Kentucky House has a part-time position. So he's like, well, I can't quit my full-time position for a part. So
not in this
he had
economy.
To step back. Absolutely not. And so that kind of meant that we officially became the Democratic candidate, which was very nice. Because it kind of freed us up to, instead of having to run 2 elections, now we just get to run 1. Because there is a difference in the primary campaign versus a general campaign.
I'm talking to the actual candidate for the Democrat seat. For the seat for the Democrats, rather.
That is right. Yep. It is going to be me and Tony Hampton, the two of us head to head in November.
Wow. Can we put you in our winners column, even though we had nothing to do with it?
I certainly hope so. But let me tell you, speaking of Tony Hampton, the one thing that actually kind of pushed me over the edge, and I was reading the Lexington paper, which was, our biggest, local paper. And I flipped to the op-ed page. This was around Thanksgiving. And Tony Hampton had written an op-ed. And at a time when, all through last year with tariffs and everything else, we saw prices, if not continuing to rise, they sure didn't come down like we were promised they were going to come down, So we've still got people who are struggling. It's Thanksgiving, it's the Christmas holidays. People are, are trying to put money away, trying to do what they can for their kids and their families. And the op-ed that Tony Hampton wrote was, you should search the Kentucky Missing Money database because you might have some hidden secret money you didn't know anything about. And the way that sent me out the roof, both the stories of my out the roof with anger. I was like, this man is the guy who was supposed to talk to this district and say, here's what I'm doing to make your life better. And he takes the chance to get a half a page in the biggest local paper and says, maybe you had some great uncle sometime leave you $500.
He sounds like somebody, how you rub two nickels together. You hear that shriek, shriek. That's what's going on in his brain.
Just like talking about like not passing the vibe check, missing the moment, however you want to put it. But that absolutely just sent me, and I was like, no, we have to do this. There cannot be nobody running against this man.
And see, but I think that's something that a lot of people fail to connect the dots on. This person takes his position in his community, in his district, and the votes that come with it for granted so tough that he could say just about anything. And he thinks it doesn't matter. I'm still going to win anyway. This is a safe seat for me. I'm still going to win. Nobody's going to challenge me. So I'm just going to come on here and talk about looking for money in your couch cushions.
It's a retirement job for him. It's a literal retirement job for him, And he had a long career before, he's in this seat. And I'm like, listen, you can change careers, but if you're going to step up and say, hey, I want to represent you, then your job is to try and make people's lives better. Now, we might have differences about how to do that, but at least come at me with something other than maybe there's some missing money for you somewhere.
That's pointless, silly, and not at a time where people really need to be, tell me how I can get more money out of my employer, not out of my money that's entitled to me. How about that?
Right. Like I said, maybe you had a great uncle somewhere leave you a couple $100. Like that is his solution for, and that's what actually took me over the edge of I'm doing this.
Well, all right. Well, you're doing it and you're here. And I guess good luck in November. That's awesome. I'm so that is really awesome. That's a good bit of news to start this off with. Also, I have an icebreaker here if you're interested. What is the most unnecessary thing you've been dramatic about this week? Did your legs get tangled up in the dog leash?
The most unnecessary thing that I've been dramatic about.
Were there not enough chocolate chips in your cookies? Or were you like me? You bought a bag of grape Jolly Ranchers and now it's only 5 left and you cried?
What I did is I ordered some of these like little prepackaged protein shakes I like to take to work from Amazon, and they sent me something completely different. And the way that I ran to the porch to get my box of my chocolate chip cookie dough flavored protein shake bottles, just to look and see that it was very much not my chocolate chip protein cookie shake. And just the deflated feeling I felt for a moment, and I let myself feel. I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to sit in this for a minute because I really was looking forward.
Though. I'm a protein shake girly. I understand.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was. It's just looking at the box like that's not what the box usually looks like.
Of course, I would have been one of those. I need to get on the phone right now with these people right now. They're going to I'm going to get this within the hour. Nobody messes with my protein. Nobody.
My husband actually said, are you going to call him right now? I said, no, this was like later. And I was like, no, I'm not going to call him. I'm going to like message. He got the wrong product. He was like, no, you should call him right now. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm with your
So
husband.
you two would get along just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Immediate amelioration is what I require. All right, let's get into this because this District 62 being taken over by the Toyota Corporation is something that I find fascinating. Toyota wants to expand. It wants to invest $800 million into the Georgetown plant to prepare it for its second battery electric vehicle plant and increase production of the Camry and the RAV4. Now, for the people in the audience, if you have any questions, you are welcome to come up, hit the multi-guest, come up. I forgot to mention that, or leave it in the chat, and Jackson can either read it himself or I can read it off to him. But we prefer you come up and ask him. Engage with the candidate. We appreciate that. Remember, use TikTok-friendly language. No nastiness. Be kind. We need more kindness in the world. That goes for you too, Jackson. I'm kidding. I kid. So they're promising more high-skilled manufacturing jobs, but that means more demand for technical training, more pressure on local schools to produce job-ready graduates. Toyota wants to fund the workforce pipeline directly. It wants to do all these things. Tell me why this would be kind of problematic for Scott County, as far as I'm looking at schools, issue with schools, more pressure on the pipeline. I'm looking at more training for workers. They might need more land. What's the deal with this, and what are you going to do about it?
So there's a couple of things with this I think can be really, really good. Obviously, like the reason that like especially Georgetown has grown, is because of Toyota. So, Toyota has brought so much money into the community. It has brought so much, new home building, new townhome building. It's just the whole area has grown exponentially because of Toyota. So when Toyota says, hey, I want to come in and put a whole bunch more money in, and here's what I want to do, I think that is great. But the problem comes when they can't do it alone.
Right.
And what they're facing right now is a Kentucky legislature who wants to keep cutting money for public education. And so if Toyota is saying, hey, we want to be talking about a pipeline for people to get this skilled trade training, to have good paying jobs for their families and afford a nice home in a nice area, so they can stay here, and not have to graduate and try to move somewhere to get a job. Well, then we need the Kentucky legislature to do their part and make sure that our Kentucky public schools can support the training and the extra input from Toyota. Because right now, our Kentucky public schools have not been funded at the level we promised to fund them since 2008.
Yeah.
2008.
We had a candidate on here last week who was going for the state legislature, and she said the same thing. They're not constitutionally funding the schools.
Correct. Yeah, it was the promise that we made to the kids, and we have not kept up with that promise. And what the Kentucky legislature loves to do is to keep giving, the half a percentage point income tax break each year if we meet certain benchmarks. Well, if we took that money and we put that money, instead of giving a half a percentage point income tax break, if we put that money toward Kentucky public schools, just looking at Georgetown and Scott County schools would have an extra $9 million. That is an extra $1,000 per student that we could spend on making sure that we have good transportation for the students, so we don't have students having to wake up at Marine Corps hours, to go and stand for the bus because we've cut bus routes. That's to make sure that we have ancillary staff in our schools, so that we don't have, by the same token, people are trying to cook a lunch, but they got to get there at 5 a.m. because they don't have the money to staff the people. It's these kind of things that people sometimes don't think about when they think about public school funding. Now, when we do talk about the thing that a lot of people think about is our public school teachers, right? Well, Kentucky, we're looking at 48th in the nation in starting public school teacher pay.
Oh,
And 49th in the country and like ancillary staff pay. Now, again, if we took the money that we gave in another tax cut and put that money to the public schools, we could be talking about like a 20% raise for our teachers. We could be talking about actually compensating them for the work and the responsibility that we're asking them to do. So I think that, if Toyota wants to keep putting money in, I think that's great, because a lot of the things that have happened here have been because that Toyota has wanted to invest so much money. But Toyota can't do it by themselves. We need the state to keep its promises on the other end of that so that we can keep this pipeline going. Otherwise, Toyota's going to put the money in. They're just going to have people coming in from outside of Georgetown and Scott County. They're just going to find other people to fill the jobs,
I feel like
because
also recent developments in environmental policy in a certain person's administration would also affect the manufacturing of EV batteries and cars. There's a certain person in office who, you look like you have some idea.
shall remain nameless. Let's not put a dark cloud over this early. Well, now we did have, and here's the thing where it comes to that too, that we kind of have to make sure that we hold Toyota accountable, because Ford also has brought a lot of money to Kentucky, an hour away over in Louisville. Ford has brought so much money and helped build up that area so much. Ford had, they were going to invest in this Blue Origin plant. They were going to make this new EV batteries, and then they pulled the rug out from underneath those people. So, with Toyota talking about investing money, I think it's incredible. We want to put more money into our community, but we need to hold them a little bit more accountable. Let's say, listen, don't play with our emotions like this, because we want you to put the money in, and we want to do our part to support you, and everybody grows together, right? So we have to make sure that, that we hold them accountable to that as well.
So what do you think is with the school funding, who do you think is to blame here? Is it the Republican legislature, or is it the Democrat governor, or is it the people not demanding better from their politicians? Who's responsible?
I think a lot of issues can maybe have a little bit of all the above, but not this one. This one is going to be solely on the Republican legislature, and I'll tell you why. Because in 2023, when Andy, which, our governor, we all call him Andy or Uncle Andy. There's no Governor Bashir here. It's just Andy.
Andy.
No, he's incredible. But so when Andy was reelected, easily in 2023, there was a motion put to the entire state, and it was going to be a motion to allow or not allow public funding to go to private and charter schools. And this motion was defeated handily. It was like 60-something%, right? So Kentuckians said very clearly, we want public money for public schools. It's right there in the name. It's not. Don't get crazy. It's right there in the name. So ever since that vote, our Republicans in Frankfort, our state capital, have been trying to find ways to get around this. And this year, our Kentucky legislature has done some pretty interesting things to get around that. One of the things that they like to do, they decided they were going to create a new special large tax credit for people to donate money to private schools, right? So this did not exist, and this was above and beyond like the amount you could deduct on state taxes, previously. They were going to make this extra new big deduction that you could do and you could get if you gave that money to a private school.
That's amazing. That is cool.
And the state legislature has, again, in their public school, funding bills and their education bill, they have done everything they can do to reroute that money toward private and charter schools instead of getting that money to our public schools. And the effect that we know, there's some downstream effects, obviously, of these things. But one of the effects that we know we're going to have is a significant decrease in our transportation for school. So when I was talking about, kids out here standing on the corner, like, I used to have to stand at 0430, in a formation because we were going to cut buses, and not everybody can just, carpool the kids to school. A lot of people rely on this, and, parents work, and we rely. So when we cut things like that, it doesn't just affect the kids who have to be out there so early. Now the parents have to be. It's just the downstream effects of things, that are easy to sometimes overlook. And so the fault of, in this case, lies directly with the Kentucky state legislature and the Republicans that have a supermajority there.
Supermajority, yeah.
In both houses.
In both houses. Wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the Kentucky politics. I don't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
The current incumbent has sponsored or co-sponsored 33 bills in his recent term. How will you top that and make a real impact for your constituents?
Well, I will say, I now, credit where credit's due. I am glad to see that Representative Tony Hampton has decided to do a little work this session, because last session he sponsored or co-sponsored 8 bills. And when I look at other first term representatives, like I said, my friend Adam Moore, who ran, and Adam's first term, he had his name on, I think, 28 or 29. And so in Representative Tony Hampton's first term, he did 8, which is kind of why I said this is kind of a retirement job. So credit where it's due. I'm glad to see I wouldn't have voted for any of these. Well, but,
I didn't say what the bills were.
Right. He's doing something. So a couple of things that, that are the most important things to me, is, we've already talked about the public school funding piece, so, committing to properly funding our public schools is something that is non-negotiable for me, and I'm not saying that we have to, which, listen, schools should be palaces and teachers should be almost millionaires. Okay. That's just for what they do. I'm not saying that we have to do that, because that's just not realistic. But what I am saying is that I would not put my name on anything that strips money away from that. I will fight to do that. The most important thing for me is because of my experience is our healthcare system.
Okay.
And there are a couple of things that I have pledged that I want to do right out of the gate.
Well, let us know.
And there is, I'm in the emergency department. I see that we are overrun with patients. We don't have room for the patients. In our waiting room is too full. We've got beds lining all the hallways, and the hospital's full upstairs. So we got nowhere for anybody to go. And the thing that I see more and more and more is people end up coming to us in the ER because they either don't have primary care, or they can't get into primary care, or even worse, they've been dropped from their primary care. So there is this 3-part plan. I was like, listen, people love a 3-part plan, right? So 3-part plan
with a catchy name. Does it have a name?
Yeah. So I don't. Well, it doesn't really have a name. That's something I got to come up. I got to come up with
the
a catchy
3
name
P's to healthcare. Something like that. So the first thing that I want to address from the start is the fact that a lot of people have been dropped from their primary care because they have Medicaid. Now, 1/3 of my state uses Medicaid. 1/3 of my state uses Medicaid. That's a lot.
And Medicaid is not just for, like kids with lifetime disability. Medicaid is what pays for our nursing homes. That's not Medicare. People think that's Medicare, but that's Medicaid that is keeping, mama and papa in that skilled nursing facility. 1/3 of my state uses Medicaid. And what people don't realize is that if you see a primary care provider and you have Medicaid, well, then they get reimbursed at one rate. But if you have Medicaid, that provider gets reimbursed at such a low rate that sometimes these people who own their own practices, they literally cannot afford to keep seeing so many Medicaid patients because they can't keep the lights on and they can't pay the bills, because we have because we have demonized Medicaid, right? Going all the way back to 1980s and, the welfare queen of right? We have demonized Medicaid for decades. And so in the process of that, people have been able to take this funding down, 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 and take the reimbursement down, 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 down with it. So now providers can barely afford to see Medicaid patients because the money they get back for it is so little.
Yeah.
Now, there was a part of the Affordable Care Act of Obamacare that made that gap between the Medicare reimbursement and the Medicaid reimbursement, that it closed that gap.
Yeah, it did.
And they allowed that to expire in 2014.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, and so you think about how the Medicaid gap, right? So people are not getting reimbursed properly for Medicaid patients. And then in the big, another just a quick side point, I hate when people say, oh, it's the big ugly bill. It's the big Republican budget. Let's, it's the big Republican budget. We don't need to give it a cute name. Just call it what it is.
Yeah.
This was the big Republican Party budget. And it took $1 trillion from Medicaid, sorry. So
it took money from Medicare too.
It did.
Yeah.
But people who own their own, if you own a primary care practice and you see that $1 trillion just got taken away from Medicaid, and you already don't get reimbursed properly from Medicaid, what are you thinking about you have to do this coming year? So people have dropped Medicaid patients.
Wow.
And I think that one of the first things we need to do is fix that reimbursement gap. Now, along with that, people don't know how to use insurance that they have. And a lot of times, we like to say, oh, they just come here because this or that. We hold people responsible for information that we don't give them. We have unrealistic expectations, right? If you are a single mom who is trying to work your job and you are trying to get a second job and you have your kids, how can I expect you to understand the ins and outs of how insurance works?
Don't expect me to understand it.
Well, listen, I deal with the human body. You couldn't pay me enough to do the insurance. I'm like, no, those people are queens. Those are goddesses. Okay.
Have you ever had to read, like, they give you that, you know what I'm saying? What do you first see the doctor and you got, yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So people don't understand how best to use their insurance, right? So, and you ever gotten a student loan and then you get that email that says, hey, you have to take this little student loan training thing, right? It takes like 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that if anybody is on a program like Medicare or Medicaid? Because if we did that, and if we clearly said, the emergency room is for emergencies, and if you can't go see your primary care provider, we understand that. But if we fix the reimbursement gap so that we have more primary care available, then we teach people when they need to go to the emergency room versus when they need to go to their primary care. Because somebody going to their primary care for a blood pressure problem is going to cost them, a couple $100s. You coming to see me for a blood pressure problem? We could be talking about tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So people don't know how to use the programs that they have correctly. And if more people use them correctly, then it would actually cost less money because we'd be spending less in reimbursement. You see?
So what if that's an issue of education? There are people who are operating at that like 10th, 11th grade level, and they know when they're sick, they need to see a doctor, and the only doctor they know is at the hospital.
Exactly. Yep. But I think that's why why don't we have something as simple as that like 8-minute student loan thing that we did? You send a link to their phone. Because you get text messages through your insurance, as well. So
I get letters from my insurance company explaining to me and my insurance company actually did what you suggested. And I have government employee health insurance. And they did. They say, this is when you go see your doctor. This is when you go to urgent care. This is when you go to the emergency room. And we have all of
Yep.
these other resources, and you can you can have an MD online, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
I'm a highly skilled, trained attorney. I understand that. But
Well, it's I think that it could be, when we think back to the first point, right? If we try to fix the reimbursement gap so that more primary care is available to people, and then we try to emphasize to people, hey, listen, this primary care is the first thing that you do. That's your first call. That's the most important piece. Because if you see your primary care provider every year, the chances of me having to admit you go way down.
yeah,
So
exactly.
just
Yep.
emphasizing these basic big bullet points to people can really help that. And then number 3, and this is kind of a point of personal thing for me as a PA in Kentucky. Kentucky is one of the worst states in the country for PAs. As far as our scope of practice, being in the hospital, I'm okay to do anything. But if I were to try to open my own practice, it'd be really, really hard in Kentucky. Now, you've got physician assistants and nurse practitioners who want to do primary care. I went to school with a lot of people who want to do primary care. Well, we have a desperate shortage in primary care. We have 120 counties in Kentucky. Of those 120 counties, 107 of them are healthcare deserts with regards to primary care. So if we're thinking about how primary care is this big important piece, well, then how do we get more primary care? Well, you kind of take some of the shackles off of nurse practitioners and PAs,
Right.
and say, listen, we're going to allow you to practice independently doing primary care. And we're going to even give you tax credits if you want to open up your own primary care practice, especially in an area that's in a healthcare desert. Because we have the people who want to do it. And so it's like, listen, you want to do primary care. Look, hey, you want to own your own small business? Kentucky's, we got you. You want to start your own primary care business. We're going to help. So if you think about those kind of 3 things together, number 1, we make sure that Medicaid properly pays primary care. Number 2, we teach people how to use their insurance. And number 3, we have more primary care available to people. You're going to have more people getting better care sooner. You're going to have overall costs go down because they're spending less money on a big hospital bill, and the ERs are not going to be, your wait times are going to improve. Everything can be helped with these just simple things. Now, I say simple. Nothing is simple getting it passed through, Congress. But I think as far as, it's not rocket science trying to think about how these things can actually help people, and they can help people quickly.
You just laid out your primary keys to healthcare access right there. Right there.
That's
Now,
it.
we have our own resident healthcare expert, Alicia. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Mr. Jackson?
Hi.
So
Hi.
I don't quite have a question for you, but I've got something that I work for an insurance company. I work for an employer-only insurance company. So we are very new. We're very small. We're still in that kickstart era. We're only about 4 years old. But let me tell you about something cool that our insurance company does. And it's one of the only reasons I kind of agree to work for insurance, because, that's always looked down on. So
Yeah.
First of all, we have a 30-minute presentation. We give a 30-minute presentation to every single one of our members to explain to them what their benefits are, what an annual deductible is, what a coinsurance is, what a copay is. We explain to them who's in our network. We explain to them what medications are allowed and which are not. We find alternatives for those medications. We speak to their doctors. Not only that, we are in these health care deserts, how you guys call them. We are in every single city in the entire country. We have found even that small mom and pop doctor that works right out of his home office. We have added them to our network. It's actually really cool. And I was just thinking about, because we talk about, how do we expand? How do we get other insurance companies to do things like that? So you, as a physician assistant, this is something you may want to look into, because I think it's very important that we give that education to members so that they know how to use it. We explain why you don't go to the emergency room. We have urgent cares that are cheaper. We have telehealth options. So I just wanted to tell you about my company because that's something that we do. And I thought that this is something, now that you speak about it, I do find I didn't know the importance of it until I worked for this company. So
Yeah,
I just
think it's
wanted to,
incredible.
yeah, it is. Well, our CEO, he is 31 years old. He is up to date with everything. We've got an AI that's being created just for our company and our members,
wow.
where you can ask, hey, his name is Benny, but you can ask Benny, hey, I have to get a surgery. What do I need? Who do I go to? And so I just wanted to brag about mine, just so you know that there is insurance companies out there that do care. So
That's
just
I love that.
I can't believe we had somebody defending insurance. Do you hear
I
that?
know. I never would do that. Never. But and we have our primary care options that we have a clinic in Austin, but most of the rest of the country is going to be like a virtual visit. We've kind of, this dude, our CEO, he just kind of figured it out that there's a gap in the healthcare system, and he found a gap, and he's trying to do his best to fill it in. So I just wanted to brag because there are insurance companies that aren't so bad out there.
No, I love it. Well, there's we actually have a thing for the hospital group that I work for, that it's a group within their group that helps people find regular primary care. So
Right.
when I discharge someone, when I discharge you and I put your follow-up instructions, every single time, anywhere you go, it's going to say follow up with your primary care provider.
Right.
Well, if they
Right.
don't have a primary care provider, who am I telling them to follow up with? So there's a group that actually helps people find primary care. So every time we discharge someone, we stress that, hey, if you don't have primary care, call this number. They can help you get primary care.
Yeah.
That's the most important piece. It's like we whatever we're going to call it family first, right? Family medicine
Right.
comes first. That's
Right.
that's what we got. If we don't focus on that, like we said earlier, we can't hold people accountable for information that they don't have.
They have no clue. Yeah, I agree.
They have no clue. And so, the more that we can kind of help them understand their benefits and help them, when to use it where. And again, the primary care is the most important piece. People can't get, if they don't know what they don't know.
Right. Right. I love it. So thank you. I hope you wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. All right. Insurance this, insurance that.
So speaking of insurance, there's a couple other things that we've talked about we'd like to do. So you've heard about surprise medical bills.
Yes, I've seen them too.
I've gotten them myself. So there is a national law that prevents a lot of surprise medical billing. Now, some states have taken that and gone a step further, and I think that we should be one of them, because I think there should be no place for surprise medical bills. I had to be seen in an ER several years ago, and I have two forms of insurance. I have a private insurance, and I have VA care. And I got hit with like a $3,000 bill 2 months after I left that ER, and I was like, "What the hell?" There should be no place for surprise medical billing. There should be no loophole, and I think that Kentucky should be one of the states that strengthens that law. And when we talk about people understanding more about their health care, there is something called an all-payer claims database, which is kind of the name describes it doesn't at all. What this is it's basically a database of medical providers, and it has a list of their procedures, their outcomes, their costs, their reviews, so that you can actually, for a lot of procedures and a lot of providers, be able to make a conscious decision based on a comparison, right? I mean, the most important thing that some people ever pay for, aside from a home, which let's not even talk about buying a home in America, the healthcare being one of the things we spend the most money on, we literally expect people just to go in and say, okay, I'm here for you to see me and fix me, without having any knowledge, because they can't have that knowledge. Well, why don't we make it available to them? The all payer claims database actually helps do that. And by doing that, it actually introduces that the beloved Republican thing of the free market, right? It actually introduces some free market competition so that provider A can see how much provider B is now charging. And so provider A might say, well, I want some of that business. So they're going to make their rates a little bit lower, right? It introduces that aspect of competition and holding people accountable because the outcomes are going to be there too. So it keeps medical provider, it keeps us, more accountable and more, and more open, and it gives patients more information about who they're going to see and how it's going to go.
Okay,
And
so
that bill's actually,
I think you've just presented like your first 10 bills that you're going to sponsor.
I think something like that. Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, trying to get to double digits right quick. So
Yeah. That's awesome. But now it's time for some rapid fire.
let's go.
Listen, these are yes or no, one word answers. No need to elaborate. We ain't got time for that. Should developers pay higher impact fees for new subdivisions?
Dude,
I guess
it's like a yes no. That's like a yes no maybe so, because where do they want to put these new subdivisions?
I guess you can expound. That's fine.
I think that especially if anything's got to be displaced for a new subdivision to go, right? If we start talking about the whole eminent domain, right? I think that there are situations where they should be expected to contribute more and pay more if they want to do something on land, especially if that land has anything on it already.
Okay.
That's
Okay. Should the state increase funding for Georgetown's traffic congestion?
Yes.
Okay. Should, well, you already answered that one. Should new housing developments be required to fund school capacity?
1,000%.
Okay.
Yeah, listen, public schools make everybody better. They make everybody and everything better.
They do. I agree. I am the product of a public school, by the way. Should the state raise the minimum wage?
Yesterday.
Yes.
The day before yesterday.
What's the current minimum wage in Kentucky? Is it like $7?
It's the federal minimum. It's $7.25. Yeah. Which I mean,
Go ahead.
I can't even. I mean, I can't even.
What would you raise it to? What would you raise it to? If you had the power.
I think that we've got to hit 15, and I think that we cannot go from 7.25 to 15. But every time we've seen this be implemented, it has not caused businesses to leave. It has just caused people to have more spending power. People don't have to have that fourth job. People don't have to do 2 jobs and a DoorDash. And and it's not like people are taking the extra money they get and putting it under their mattress. They're spending that money. That money goes back into the community.
We're buying Jay-Z concert tickets.
Right, no, we're all buying Beyonce tickets and Trump sneakers. That's what we're doing with this money. We're not actually spending any money in Georgetown.
Okay. Should Kentucky protect more farmland from suburban development?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think that suburban development, again, I mean, we've been talking about it. It's important. I want to see it, but what actually built Kentucky before Toyota got here was our farmland, and these rolling hills of Kentucky, and that's what built Kentucky. So we cannot just say that suburban development is just going to trump that, automatically.
Okay. Should Kentucky expand water quality protections for agricultural areas?
Yes, and I do want to talk about water in Georgetown too later on.
Okay, go ahead. Talk about it.
So water in Georgetown has got a matter our the chairman of the Scott County Democratic Party. We talked the other day, and the first thing she said, "Oh, maybe people are mad," and people are mad because the water bill in Scott County has gone up by hundreds of dollars for some people.
Oh no.
And whenever people call, they say, "Oh, you got a leak,"
Oh,
but they don't have a leak.
Yeah.
And so, kind of going back to what we talked about, very early on, right? When Toyota comes in, they're not bringing their own water. They're going to be using, the municipal sources. So I think that these people should have to absolutely contribute, maybe even more, than the people who are still doing that 10% that are below the pot, trying to pay their water bill. And public utilities need to be held to account as well, because our legislature has moved to make it harder for individual people to challenge public utilities. And while the legislature did that, people here in Georgetown, here in my city, have seen their water bills jump by $100 a month, and all they're told is, "Well, you must have a leak." And so
you know what? And you know what? In that case, you shut off all of the, whatever. You go look at your water meter, and if it's moving, then maybe you do have a leak. If it's not moving, then you absolutely do not have a leak, but you have something being blown up your butt.
There's something else going on, right? Yeah. So that, when you talk about like any kind of like public utility, that is, and there's no data centers currently being proposed for here in Georgetown. There are some over in Louisville, but when we talk about the massive drain on public utilities that those things cause. When in some places we need to invest more in our public utilities as they are for the people that are currently on them. So like I said, we have to make sure that as Toyota wants to come in and they want to use these, we have to build up these utilities and make sure that we're protecting the individual citizens paying these bills before we make sure that Toyota is protected or that a data center is protected.
Right. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. I got one more rapid fire. Rapid fire.
I've not been good at that part. No.
No one is. Nobody is.
You ask somebody running for a political office, you know what's going to happen.
You all can't answer a yes or no question. It's crazy. Bourbon balls or Johnny cakes?
Bourbon balls.
See? Oh, right off the bat. I like that. I've never had a bourbon ball, but I have had Johnny cakes. That's just cornbread, by the way.
Well, I mean, I've heard people call Buckeyes bourbon balls. So,
well, I'm allergic to peanuts, so I cannot have a Buckeye.
Yes, you can't. Yeah, because see, I'm from Ohio, so Cincinnati was home for me, so I kind of bridged as to you're
a Buckeye bourbon ball person.
Yep.
And I can't have any. I can't have any of that. I can't have the bourbon. I can't have the peanuts. Good grief! All right, let's see what.
There's nothing like a really good bourbon drink. There really, really is.
We had another candidate on here early in our movement who actually is manufacturing her own whiskey. I wish I could remember her name. She was running for U.S. House.
You've had a friend of mine on here who was a bourbon blogger, Aaron Petrie.
Yes, Aaron Petrie. Yes.
Aaron Petrie and Aaron Petrie's a good friend of mine. Yeah, we've become friends in this campaign. Yeah, yes, absolutely.
I love her.
She's incredible.
Her. She is.
We've bonded over our love of progressive politics, bourbon, and Star Trek. So we've become.
That is awesome. Let's see. I'm trying to find something with a question you haven't answered. Okay. Well, you mentioned data centers, so let's talk about AI. You've said Kentucky should regulate AI and online platforms if Washington, D.C. fails to act. What specific protections would your proposed legislation include to ensure children are safe from harmful AI chatbots, online exploitation, and dangerous content?
The if DC fails to act, we know they failed to act. I mean, a matter of fact, there was an executive order that was written by, who shall remain nameless. He's like our Voldemort. Like, you don't even want to say the name. But there was an executive order saying states are not allowed to regulate AI. Now, who does that benefit? That benefits the billionaires who own the AI companies.
AI companies. There are AI PACs now. Did you know that? There are AI PACs.
Absolutely. And so I think that what we can do at a state level, because other states have done it, and you have seen some states do it for when you like pornography sites, right? A lot of states have made it so you can't just hit
one
Google.
Of the no-no words. That's one of the no-no words.
Oh,
Mr. Jackson.
Some of the corn sites.
Yes. Yes.
Some of the corn sites that people have, you have to verify ages now and across the country, but we can have kids just access these AI, and we've got kids, 9, 10, 11-year-old kids with like AI chatbot friends.
Yeah.
And actually, Kara Swisher, who I think does some incredible reporting, I think she's really brilliant. Kara Swisher has done a series on this of these times that the AI chatbot friends have even helped some of these kids do self-harm. And
that's important.
So a 2-point thing. Number one, we know that we can help verify ages, so we can do that. And number two, we can make it so that third parties can be held accountable. So if like right now, if the Twitter X chatbot tells you to do something to harm somebody or something, they can't be held accountable.
Right.
So if you made it so they can be held civilly liable, then, they might get their act together a little bit, because the last thing they want to do is spend money, because the money's the most important thing, So even just making it so they can be held liable. I'm not even saying that we have to start, I'm not even saying let's all start, go file a lawsuit, but changing the law so they can be held civilly liable would encourage them to kind of clean up their act on their end as well. Because right now,
would encourage me to clean up my act. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. And right now, it's the wild, wild west. Right now, it's just with impunity, kind of whatever you want to do. So if we kind of made that civilly liable for like the third party, if you and I had somebody tell me once, they were like, "Well, that's a lot of code," and I was like, remember last year when the Twitter X chatbot was saying things like, when you would ask who's the greatest basketball player of all time, it was not a debate about, LeBron versus Jordan. It would say Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Now, why did it do that? Because somebody with control of that chatbot typed in, answer Elon Musk for this, enter. And it was that simple, right? It's that simple. I'm like, so you can't tell me that if you can do that at, for the level of all of the Twitter X chatbot to answer all those questions like that, like you can't tell me that it's so complicated that we can't make it so that it doesn't tell little kids to do awful, horrible, like we know that we can change the programming for some things, but the other things, that's just too hard. It's just too hard.
Well,
it's too complicated.
Shouldn't parents play a role in this too? And you can't rely entirely on the state to protect your kids. Obviously, we've seen how the state fails to protect children time and time again. Mm-hmm. I mean, you work in the emergency room, you know it. We can't always rely on the state to do the right thing.
Absolutely. I think that, listen, it's the same idea as talking about medicine, like family first, right? Your family medicine comes first. Well, what happens, with your parents, that's the first guardrail, and I think, again, going back to the healthcare piece, how many parents don't know what their kids are doing with an AI chatbot, and it's not that they don't care. It's that I think a lot of them don't know.
And they sneak them in. Have you noticed? This particular app sneaks in their chatbot. And you don't even know you're talking to the chatbot. You don't know that you're querying on a chatbot. Because they just kind of sneak it in and make it look like a search bar. And it's not a search bar, it's a chatbot.
I just got a new phone, and we won't talk about any names, but I got a new phone that was a different brand from my old phone. and the new phone's awful, and it has an AI that keeps coming up, and I'm like, God, what did I hit that made this AI come up? I don't want you. I don't, and so yeah, it's involved in, and it can be what an incredible tool, what an incredible tool it is, and it can be used. AI has come up with some possible cancer cures because it's able to run these diagnostic things and play them out way, into the future where it would take us years to do it.
Yeah.
AI's been able to help. So it's not that all AI bad, right? That's not it's incredible, but just saying that you cannot regulate that automatically makes me, well, why? Why wouldn't you want to, why wouldn't you want to that makes me want to regulate it automatically. I'm like, I'm just going to be a contrarian, like, well, why not? Why can't I do that? But, at the state level, there are things that we can do to help protect kids being on there. We can strengthen age verification policies, and we can make it so that some of these parties can be held civilly liable.
And there are other vulnerable populations that might need those protections too. It's not just children.
In addition, yeah, absolutely. The scam bots with older people. I mean,
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many things, and the AI piece is involved in a whole lot of that. And so again, actually making it so there is someone that can be held civilly liable,
So you're thinking civil penalties or lawsuits or what?
making them be making it so that someone can sue them in civil court.
Okay.
You look at how how we've protected gun manufacturers.
Pew pews.
Yes, the when we've protected the pew pew. When we know that someone is directly involved in a pipeline of an action happening, then that action happens, but then we pretend like some people involved in that pipeline just have no responsibility. Well, then why are they going to be encouraged to do better? And so just making it so that say the Twitter. Again, I keep coming back to that because Grok is just the most egregious AI, but, making it so that they can be held civilly liable if someone can prove that someone's child was negatively harmed or God forbid, did something terrible because it had a conversation with Grok and Grok encouraged them to do it. Well, then they need to be held, civilly liable. And again, not saying the parents have no, have no responsibility here either, but there are several people contributed to that outcome, and I think that we have to be able to step back and say, if, the people who contributed to that outcome should all be a part of the responsibility for that outcome.
So in your district, there has to be a most pressing need, something that when you're talking to constituents, they mention, you hear it over and over and over again. What is that, and how do you plan on addressing it? And if it's healthcare, you've already talked about it. You can say that, but I'm sure there's something else. There's something. You got farms there. You got, everyday working Americans.
I don't think actually, health. Well, I think healthcare is important, everywhere. But luckily here in Georgetown, we're right next door to Lexington, so there's so much more, healthcare available to us here in the 62nd district. So, I don't think that is our most pressing issue. I think that right now, if you just asked people, I think that a lot of them would talk about the utility piece that we mentioned earlier, because again, going back to the current administration, so all of the proposals for wind and solar, they cut off, they have paid companies to stop making solar panels.
Yes.
They're paying people to not do it.
To walk away from the projects,
to walk away from that are almost ready to plug in and go. And so in these places that we had we were so close to really making a big step away from like old fossil fuels and toward renewable energy.
Yeah.
Well, we've taken that big giant step back, and so now again we've got Toyota. They want to expand. Well, Toyota isn't going to bring a brand new coal power plant with them,
No.
right? They're going to be sharing the utilities, that we already have. And so, I think that people's concern here for, how we have to make sure that we balance the growth of industry versus what kind of hit that's going to put on the people who are already here is really, really important.
So are you seeing support? Are people saying, yes, I support these renewable energy projects? Or are people kind of like, I don't know?
I think that every time that you bring it up, I've never had someone say that's not a good idea, and people kind of vary on the yes side, but I've never had someone just say, nope, I think that's not good, because not everybody thinks that, when you have a solar panel and when the sun goes down, you can't turn the lights on, or if the wind's not blowing, your TV won't come on. Like some people actually understand how these things work. I mean, matter of fact, full disclosure, Tyler and I made the decision last year to get solar panels on the house. And it was a pretty big expense. And we had to sit and say, okay, do we have the budget for this? How is this going to help us in the future? And part of the reason that we did it last year is because last year you could still take advantage of that tax credit. And that ended, December 31st. And we'd kind of been thinking about it, but then we were like, and so I see in this neighborhood, there are quite a few homes, that have solar panels, because nobody thinks it's a bad idea. It's just a matter of how do we take an idea that everybody supports, whether they're okay with it or they love it, take again, what can we do at the state level? Well, at the state level, we could do like what used to be at the national level, the tax credit that we took advantage of. We could do a state tax credit for renewable energy installation. So,
remember when Obama came in, he was president, and he had all of these tax credits if you turn in your old appliances. What was it? Cash for clunkers or something?
Cash, yeah.
You could turn in an old car and get a tax credit, and an old refrigerator and get a tax credit.
Yep. Because everything else, you're just more energy efficient,
right?
With the new, with the new things. And then for whatever reason, we just, we decided we were going to go back to the 1920s and we were all going to be coal miners again. And, that's not sustainable,
Not for everyone, not everywhere. No,
not for everyone, and again, a lot of people right now, are not in the position to even talk about installing a solar panel system on their house. But if we at the state level said, hey, listen, we believe that renewable energy is something that can last, can be beneficial. So if we were to, say, give a tax credit for it, then we could maybe open that up to more and more people to encourage that to happen. Small businesses,
right.
You know what? Those primary care practices that we're going to help people open, they're going to get even bigger credits if they put solar panels on those primary. There we go.
Yes, I love it.
There we go.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of things with a large payout, how vital is the Derby to Kentucky's economy, and should it be contributing more?
I just saw that. So I've been to Derby. Most locals have been to Derby, and if you ask anybody who's local to Louisville or even over in Lexington, we don't go to the Kentucky Derby. We used to go to the day before the Kentucky Derby, which is called Kentucky Oaks, and it's always a Susan G. Komen breast cancer awareness event
Right.
to a lot of money, So I've gone there, I bought a pink tie, and we did. It's great. Well, then that got really popular with so many out of towners. So here, our locals, we created something called Thurby, which is the race on the Thursday before the Derby. So locals used
Derby
to go
Eve
to
Eve.
Derby Eve is Thurby, and so now a lot of locals will go to Thurby. But speaking of how important it is to the economy, what a lot of people actually do in Louisville is they go out of town Derby week and they put their home or their apartment on Airbnb.
Wow.
That is actually
smart.
that's a huge thing right now that people do. Yeah.
I would be worried somebody in my house though, for I don't know. If I'm not there.
Yeah,
If I'm not there.
and I think a lot of it too, it's what's your proximity to Churchill Downs, if it's gonna be 45 minutes all the way across town, well, but if it's going to be a 4-block walk and you have a really nice, townhome, that's big bucks you can get.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of people do that now in Louisville. Now, where I'm not in Louisville, I'm over in Georgetown by Lexington. We have Keeneland over here. So another big, Keeneland is more of a springtime thing, which Derby is too. But Keeneland, April and October, we have the big races out here at Keeneland. So it's a vital part of the economy. Some businesses wait all year long, for Derby merch, and right. If you walk through a Kroger, you can see Derby merch everywhere in every Kroger in Kentucky. So
I love it. I watch the race part. Like I'll record it and then fast forward to the race part.
To the
I
Derby.
don't know all that stuff that happens before the race. I don't know what that is. I have no idea.
It's an event that I think a lot of people, I've been, like I said, I wore my pink tie to Susan, to the Oaks. And then I've also just worn cut off shorts and a t-shirt. And I went to the infield at Derby, which is when you don't have a seat up in the, you're not all dressed up. But actually one of the most interesting Derbies I ever spent was when I was in EMS, when I was an EMT. I was part of the emergency medical coverage for the Kentucky Derby. So we were down with our little medical tent, and our stuff down on the ground. We were right by one of the tracks. So we were actually down there. It was just a really different viewpoint, after being a spectator, to be kind of there, as just a different, a different perspective.
So where is the money going? People want to know, where's the money being spent? The revenue the Derby receives, where is it going?
Well, most of it, ends up leaving with the people who can afford to come into town and bet, $1 million.
Right.
The huge advantage locally is that there's a part of town in Louisville that I used to explain to people. Last call in Louisville, Kentucky is 4 a.m. and that's normal. On Derby weekend, there's like some neighborhood of bars that it's just kind of like New Orleans. They just kind of don't close. So the boon to the local businesses, and we're talking from the dive bars with the local jam band up to the fine dining, what happens over the course of that, because Derby's not just a day too. And there's like a whole month, 2 weeks before 2 weeks before Derby in Louisville is the largest fireworks show in the world.
And isn't there some kind of like junior races or something that happens before the Derby?
There's races all leading up to it,
Yeah.
And so it's now become like not just that weekend, the bridges across the river get shut down, the fireworks, it's huge. It's a lot of fun, but it's weeks of events. And so, you have, restaurants, hotels, everybody, knows the kind of business that they're going to get during that week is a part of what could sustain them through,
Okay,
slower times than the rest of the year.
let's get into these final questions because we have 10 minutes left. When the Derby packs up and the horses trot off back to their stables and the money's gone with the people who won, who placed the bets, and you see all of these government costs have gone up and there's budget deficits. What specific areas of the state budget do you believe should be prioritized or reduced to ensure responsible fiscal management?
I think that one of the first things that we have to do is stop right out of the gate. Every year, the Republican supermajority comes out talking about how they can do the next tax cut. Kentucky has a budget surplus thanks to how Andy Beshear has been such a great spokesperson for Kentucky, and we've had so much industry come in. We have a budget surplus, and so the people who want the tax cut the most are the people who are going to appreciate it the least.
Of course, of course.
And so I think that we need to stop the immediate discussion every year when the session starts of how are we going to finagle that tax cut this year? Because what they did this year is they have tried to finagle a tax cut, which they didn't really get this year, but they try to move money from where? From Medicaid. They want to cut state Medicaid by 20%, by $2.7 billion. They want to take money away from education and, like we said, transportation. So I think that we need to reframe the debate from how do we get the tax cut to the people at the top to how can we in government actually support everybody else.
Why is healthcare,
public service, public works?
Yeah, education and healthcare are always the first they look at to cut. When you have an educated populace, education is directly tied to economic opportunities. Economic opportunities means taxes are coming into your region. And if you have a healthy populace, people can work. They can work. And they can continue to work well into their 70s, like Dr. Oz said. Come on.
Andy's pre-K for all proposal, which I've got proposing pre-K for all over the next 8 to 10 years would add 70,000 people to Kentucky's workforce. That's 70,000 people who want to get these Toyota jobs and spend the money to buy one of the new homes being built in Georgetown.
Look at all that money. I can smell
all that money. But what we want to do instead is we want to make sure that the people at the very top get that 0.5 percentage point tax cut. That's what's really important. So I think we just need to reframe the whole debate. I don't believe that the debate is big government versus small government. I think that we've been sold that for way too long. Yeah. I think the debate should be effective government versus non-effective government. That's how we need to frame it. If government is able to work and be effective and help the people.
Oh, you froze there a little bit.
Am I okay? Are we back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
But like I said, I think that people who just want to cut the government, cut taxes. I think that's the wrong debate. I think the debate is how can we be more effective, and the way you can be more effective, like you said, education and healthcare. It's not. It shouldn't be. It's not complicated, and it shouldn't be controversial.
It shouldn't be, except our government thinks that we should have the most basic of educations. Basic education should get you along in society. And then healthcare, well, your employer should be paying for that. Why don't you have a job?
I was talking about this with some people on TikTok. I had a patient a couple of weeks ago who has health coverage through their employer. They're doing everything right. They have the job, they have the health coverage, and they ended up in my ER because they couldn't afford their insulin.
Oh, yeah.
And it is a person who, again, this is not some welfare queen. This is not some, this is a person who has a job and has the insurance they're supposed to have. They're doing everything right. And they couldn't afford their insulin, which landed them in my ER.
Did you watch The Pit? Do you watch The Pit?
I watched season one. I have not. We have not binged season two yet. I
Okay.
liked season one.
I won't spoil it for you, but they deal with this on The Pit.
Mm,
They
I've
deal with
heard.
this on
Yeah,
season 2.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know what? I will say, if you like the pit, and again, if MASH is part of why I'm in medicine, Dr. Crusher from Star Trek is a part of it, but so is Noah Wiley from ER, because John
Yes.
Carter on ER when I was younger. So if you really like the pit, I suggest people go back and watch ER, because that
Yes.
show,
I've seen every episode of that show. Every
listen,
episode.
ER walked so that Grey's Anatomy could stumble. Okay, like ER, it's so good. But I do like the pit. I think the pit is it's really as I think it's just about as realistic as it can be,
Yeah, it
and
is.
still
It
be
is. Yeah.
dramatized.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's well done.
Yeah. But that's pretty sad about the insulin. That's unfortunate. That's kind of what a lot of people where I work at deal with. You can afford the health care. You're paying for the insurance through your employer. They're taking the deductible. And then when you want to get a medication, it's like, oh, your copay is actually $1,500 a month. That's banana.
Insurance premiums for Kentuckians went up about an average of 30% this year. And we've not raised the minimum wage, for in so long, and so that's why, again, so many people have just had to go without insurance now. And it's one thing to go without insurance if you're a young, healthy person who takes some ibuprofen every once in a while. But if you're a person who needs blood pressure medicine or, God forbid, insulin, what do you do? And what they do is they end up in our ERs every week or every other week. And that, it's just like what's happening right now with healthcare, and the education part goes into play as well, because we're not giving people the education they need to then, be able to get those good jobs and stay in the community and be a part of the economy. It's just not sustainable.
Or to understand what their needs are and how to advocate for themselves, right?
That they have no idea, and that's why whenever whether it was an EMS or, whenever I've precepted or I've had someone, I'm like, the most important thing that you can do is be a patient advocate. Okay. Again, they don't know what they don't know. We did not go through all the training that we went through just so we could pick the most appropriate antibiotic. Okay. Our job is to advocate for that patient. And if that means patient education, if that means getting on the phone with an insurance company, which I've done, people don't know what they don't know, and you have to help people. Which I posted this the other day. I was very amused with myself. I'll be honest with you. I thought I was hilarious. But I said, you know what? If you give a man a fish, then he eats for the day, right? But if you take away the man's fishing pole, if you take away the man's bait, and if you make it so the man cannot access the lake where the fish are, well, then you just might be the Kentucky legislature, because that is what they're trying to do.
Woo-wee. What's that? That little thing they do? Lock it.
Yeah. So I think that's where we are. And it's just what we're doing right now. We are on a course that is just not sustainable. And there's Aaron Petrie and I have talked about getting together for some TikTok events where we talk about what we can do at the national level with her and the state level with me, and how we can all try to work toward these situations, making these things better. Because again, the track that we're on, we've been kicking we're at a road. We don't have nowhere else to kick this can.
Nowhere else to kick the can, right?
And so we have to start taking some things seriously and stop just showing up, in the legislature talking about how we can get that tax cut this year.
Okay, so Randy Jackson Simpkins, in this final minute, you have exactly 1 minute to convince me, an undecided voter, to vote for you in November. Since you are the primary winner, you're going straight to November. Why should I vote for you?
Well, because I've been hospital Navy corpsman for the Marine Corps. I've been an EMT, and I'm now in emergency medicine. And so, for my entire career in healthcare, what I have done is I have dealt with emergencies. I have found a way to stay calm and make a plan and go step by step to try to fix emergencies. Well, right now in the state of Kentucky, our public schools, we're at an emergency level. We've cut funding, so our public schools are now having an emergency. Our healthcare situation, obviously, look at our ERs. We are at a healthcare emergency. And so when I talk about the things that I'm going to do, it's just exactly how I've handled every other emergency for the past 10 years. You've got to step back, you've got to make a plan, and then you just got to go step by step and go to work.
All right.
And that's it. And the plans that we've talked about tonight, our 3-point plan for the healthcare, we've got the ideas, and we're ready to start putting stuff into practice on day one. And these are things that are not going to need 15 years to make a difference. These things are going to start helping people the day they're signed into law.
Day one. I love that. I love a day one initiative. I love that. Well, Randy, let the people know where they can find you and how they can support your campaign, because these things aren't cheap, honey.
Oh, listen. So Jackson for Kentucky, the number 4, Jackson for Kentucky, the number 4 is our website. It's .com at gmail.com, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. So Jackson for Kentucky with the number 4.com. Especially check out the website. The website has a place where you can donate if you are able. To get us some more bumper stickers and some more signs and try to get this message out. And we can also sign up for some email lists, in which case, we will be emailing out as the spring and summer comes, some things for canvassing, even if you aren't local around, our area. Listen, liking and sharing and following on social media goes a long way.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And everybody in the audience out there in the Twitter sphere, this is also going to be on YouTube. Please support Mr.
We're on YouTube too. Jackson for Kentucky YouTube. We're there too.
Okay. Well, go to his YouTube, go to our YouTube and watch this over again. Support the campaign, support the campaigns of grassroots candidates in your area and across the country. You don't have to be in Kentucky to support a Kentucky Politico. You don't have to be. You could be anywhere in the country. Find his website, Jackson for Kentucky. You can go to his TikTok. I know you're on Instagram and Facebook. I think you're on Facebook too. Follow him on social media. Look at his content. He's got a lot of videos. He's very knowledgeable. He's very knowledgeable, though. He knows what he's talking about. So, also, we were supposed to have another town hall coming up tonight, but that person had to reschedule. So that's it for us tonight. I wish I knew what was coming up next tomorrow. Let me see if I can find what we're having tomorrow. Let's see, Thursday, March 26th at 6:00 p.m. We have Danielle Bell, who is running for Georgia House District 44. And then that's followed by Tyler Bridges, who is running for Indiana's U.S. House Rep District 11 at 8:00. So 6:00 and 8:00, we have a candidate from candidate from Georgia and a candidate from Indiana. Oh, that's going to be wonderful. We do this. We're here every day. We're here every day.
I went to grad school in Georgia, and I'm right across the river from Indiana, so I'm going to be watching both of those. Because
oh my God, I went to school
that's incredible.
in Indiana. I went to college in Indiana. I spent 4 years. Notre Dame. I went to Notre Dame.
Oh yeah, well, I'm on the very other end. I'm right across the river from Louisville. So yeah, I've been worked in New Albany and did EMS over there in Indiana quite a bit.
Look at us,
Midwestern. So listen, Indiana and Georgia, I got a vested interest in both those places, so that's going to be a good night.
Well, yes. Yeah, so, if you're around tomorrow, you can pop in and join us and say hello. We also do these wonderful things called Candidates Roundtables. If the host would mind changing the graphic, our host, we have these Candidates Roundtables where we invite past candidates to come back and shoot the breeze with other candidates, talk about current events and how their campaigns are going, and just maybe, you know, how they can aid each other and some ideas for how they can accelerate their campaigns. We have one coming up on, I believe it is this Sunday. This Sunday at 3:00 p.m. Yes, there we go. 3:00. Yeah. 3:00. What day is that? That's the 29th, right? I believe that's the 29th at 3:00 p.m. If you can make it, wonderful. We will have them also in April. They're every other Sunday. We'll send you an invitation and you let us know if you can make it or if you would like to be a part of another one. Since you got until November, honey, you got until November.
I'll be seeing you again.
You'll be seeing us again. Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Jackson, Randy Jackson Simpkins. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. This was really fun.
Yeah, it was, and I love that we have MASH in common. I love that.
We have MASH in the Midwest. That's it.
I love that. So again, thank you to the audience for your participation. Your interaction with us really means a lot. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. I am Ayana, and I am here most of the time, but I won't be here tomorrow. There'll be someone else. So if you want to do what we do, moderate, send us a DM. Let us know if you want to help us out. You know, I only have 2 hands, and that's not enough to do this job effectively, apparently. We need about 10 more. So send us a DM if you want to help us out here with moderating. Again, this is OVC, a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity like Randy here, and ensure every voice is heard through education, outreach, accountability, and action. We are building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. We thank you for joining us. Remember, your vote is your power, and have a great evening, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.